Hello, my name is Amaya.
I'm Sydney.
My name is Samantha.
And I'm Taylor.
Our group had researched about the current humanitarian crisis in Venezuela and how it affected families. Venezuela, once the richest country in Latin America, is now one of the most poverty-stricken nations in the world. Venezuela is no longer the prosperous nation it once was, ranking at 177 out of 180 on the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, as illustrated on the board behind me. This means that out of all the data collected from various countries around the world, Venezuela ranks third worst in means of corruption. It is evident through the statistics seen here that Venezuela's current state is not stable and is in a detrimental situation affecting the lives of many.
Once Venezuela discovered that their land fell upon an oil reserve, they made millions by selling their oil globally to oil companies. Eventually, and inevitably, the oil had lost its worth, and Venezuela's president at the time, Hugo Chavez, had never invested the finances made or considered the future of the economy. The president had completely abused his power, and Venezuela has yet to recover. A major humanitarian crisis has developed in Venezuela, affecting millions throughout the country. The conditions of Venezuela worsened during the COVID-19 pandemic, causing much of the population to become food insecure. Venezuela's currency, the Venezuelan bolivar, is one of the weakest currencies in the world, holding virtually no worth, leading to mass inflation, as shown here. This inflation causes a rise in the cost of food and medicine, which is detrimental to most Venezuelan citizens. Along with a lack of resources and rising prices, in addition to a lack of resources and rising prices, Venezuela's healthcare has also devolved. As shown here, malaria cases in Venezuela have increased greatly over the past few years. This malaria epidemic is not only affecting Venezuela, but is spilling out into neighboring countries such as Brazil. This shows that Venezuela needs all the help it can get.
Our first solution our group had thought of was to have outside organizations fundraise and collect donations online and in person. This includes factors such as money, food, supplies, and medicine. At first, this idea seemed appealing, as organizations such as the one seen on the board have helped many countries in similar situations as Venezuela to give them the necessities and supplies they need. Theoretically, implementing the same solution into Venezuela would allow them to get back on their feet again. However, this solution seems very improbable for Venezuela due to their current president, Nicolas Maduro. Nicolas Maduro, on multiple accounts, has refused aid from other countries for the sake of Venezuela's dignity. For example, an article from the Washington Post in 2019 reported that Nicolas Maduro had the Tandas Bridge blocked, as seen on the board, to prevent any aid from the United States coming into Venezuela on the notion that the Venezuelan people are not beggars. Another thing that should be pointed out is that any money fundraised for the people would simply not go to the people. Venezuela's government has proven time and time again through their lack of futuristic investment that the money would go to trivial things that would not benefit the people in the long run. Remember, Venezuela would not be in this situation if only they had invested the money that they had gotten from the oil underneath their feet. Venezuela is a kleptocracy with the way they go about abusing their money and power and leaving the common people helpless.
Another solution our group proposed is sending all Venezuelans to live in different countries that may possess better opportunities for them and their families. This solution, however, does not work for all Venezuelans, as many may not be able to travel due to health, economic, or social reasons. A move to a different country is very risky, limiting the amount of families who are willing to travel together, leaving members still behind facing the horrid conditions of Venezuela. The main recipient of Venezuelan migrants is Colombia, the neighboring country. The main issue with so many Venezuelans entering Colombia is that the migrants most of the migrants work in the informal job sector, as do many of the Colombian natives. Informal jobs refer to employment that does not have stable hours nor income. It can simply be selling fruit on the side of the street. Since these jobs are so easy to obtain, people who have lower educations can have them, as those who have higher educations will strive to get jobs in higher and more stable paying sectors. Because of so many Venezuelans entering to still get the same jobs as the Colombians, this competition creates a tension between the two. Another large receiver of Venezuelan migrants is the United States. There is no doubt that the U.S. has large amounts of immigration from various regions in the world. This is why they have had to put restrictions on who is able to enter their country. Because of these restrictions, desperate Venezuelans who make their journey into the United States find themselves entering illegally. But first, entering illegally is very dangerous, as they may get caught and deported quickly. And if they do live in the U.S. as illegal immigrants, they have limited job opportunities and the lifestyle isn't always ideal.
Our final and main solution was to bring in educated officials into Venezuela to help educate and inform healthcare workers and teachers to gain more knowledge and experience in their job, along with educating and informing citizens on common sanitary and hygiene practices. With all the poverty seen in Venezuela, it is very hard for families to be able to afford to put their child into schools. Some families are stuck between paying for their children's next meal or their next math class. The board shows how many children had to be pulled from schools due to cases where their families couldn't afford for them to be put into schools. If these families are going to be paying for their children to be put into schools, they would expect their teacher to know what they're doing and to have a good education in their field. By bringing in professionals into Venezuela to help educate these teachers, this can ensure that these children are getting the education that they deserve from their teachers. Another concept that not all Venezuelans are very familiar with would be simple hygiene tasks and many factors that go along with it. Some of these factors could include learning about teaching the youth about safety in sexual actions, so that if one is not ready to care and provide for a child, they will know how to prevent one early on. Not all Venezuelans can afford to take care and provide for a child due to economic reasons, or lack of resources, or the situation doesn't allow them to provide for a child. Some of these factors may include access to clean water, which over time, the access to clean water in Venezuela has declined a significant amount over the couple years. There are also many other reasons why not all families can afford to take care for a child. So many children don't have access to the basic needs and necessities that they should be provided as a child. As seen on the board, UNICEF has announced that so many kids lack these basic needs that they should be used to have protection. Bringing in healthcare professionals, they can inform these families of what they would have to go through, so if they know if they're ready for a child or not. Unfortunately, one major limitation to this solution would be Venezuela's president, who doesn't allow for outside organizations to help out within the country. So no outside organizations would be able to contribute or help out the Venezuelans. Overall, bringing in health officials into Venezuela can help educate teachers so the students can be ensured a better education, and they can inform families on how to better take care of their families in a more efficient and effective way.
Venezuela is currently enduring a worsening humanitarian crisis stemmed from the corrupt government and poor economy. This crisis affects families and citizens throughout the country, leading to food and medicinal shortages and mass immigration. Over 7 million are urgently in need of humanitarian aid. With a lack of food and medicine, along with mass inflation, many cannot afford to receive basic necessities, let alone education. Much of the population is left uneducated on basic concepts such as hygiene. This crisis could be solved by outside organizations or having citizens of Venezuela emigrate to neighboring countries, but it is highly unlikely. The best solution to this situation is to bring in educated officials of education and health to both provide for and aid the Venezuelan citizens, but to also teach them. This situation could be the first of many situations in Venezuela to be resolved, possibly causing a domino effect that helps resolve the other issues.
All right, let's give them a round of applause. All right, so for your oral defense questions, again, you guys will each get one. Answer this question using details from your presentations. Amaya, we're going to begin with you. Amaya, give one specific way that you're thinking changed as a result of learning about Samantha's findings.
Learning about Samantha's findings, I was able to understand how the people feel about how the government has been treating them and how the people.
Take a second.
Sorry.
It's okay. Take a second. Gather your thoughts. Think about what you want to say. Then say it.
Through Samantha's findings, I was able to understand how living there for the people and how they felt was like culturally and socially, and how Venezuelan people and their hardship from how the government has been treating them, and it really added to the TMP, giving more depth and understanding why the mass migration crisis is occurring within Venezuela and the spillage into other neighboring countries like Colombia and to the United States.
Okay. All right, Taylor. In the future, what change would you make to your group norms, and how would you expect those to improve your team's presentation?
In the future, we'd probably communicate more on deadlines and when we want to go over everything or work on something, and better stay on task to just improve the presentation, because it would just improve it overall.
Okay. Samantha, in what way did you improve your ability to work with a group as a result of this project?
Working with a group, I was able to learn how to respectfully incorporate other people's ideas, even if I might not agree with them. Everybody has a say in this, and it's very important to understand where everyone's coming from and come to a conclusion together.
All right, Sydney, lastly, reflecting on your three colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
I believe that Samantha's lens on the social and cultural aspect had the biggest influence on my overall view of this topic, since we went into detail about how families were affected by the Venezuelan humanitarian crisis. And by going into detail about the social and cultural aspect, which Samantha did, it really gave me an understanding about how these people feel and went more into depth, giving me a bigger perspective on it.
All right, great job. All right, if any of you who are currently dressed up and you do not want to be dressed up anymore and you would like to go and change, you're more than